Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Pryor, and I am the director of the Institute of Politics here at the John F. Kennedy School of Government. And we would like to welcome you tonight to the forum. I'm going to tell you a little personal story, if I might, this evening. In 1975, I had just become governor of Arkansas. Jimmy Carter had just left the governorship of Georgia, and he was preparing a race for the presidency of the United States. Governor Carter came to the governor's mansion in Little Rock, and my son, Mark Pryor, who, by the way, now is the Attorney General of Arkansas, he was in the 8th grade at that time. Mark Pryor and myself had breakfast with Governor Carter. He was telling us about his plans to run for president. And I sat there and listened to Governor Carter's plans. He was telling us about what was going to happen and what was not going to happen, who was going to run and who was not going to run. And finally, as we started to leave and Governor Carter was going downtown to a little fundraiser in Little Rock, as we walked Governor Carter out to the car, I said, Mark, to my 8th grade son, I said, you know, that's a fine man. He doesn't stand a chance of being elected president of the United States. And my 8th grade son said to me, Dad, he is going to be our next president. He was right. From then on, President Carter, when he would call the governor's mansion or call me, he would say, I want to talk to that Pryor that knows something about politics. So he called for my son. Tonight we're so fortunate to have the former First Lady, Rosalynn Carter, with us. I'd like to say right to it that to be mentally ill 50 years ago in this country, a person automatically became you might say, a cast-off, or maybe in some eyes, a non-person. I do not know of anyone in our country today who has done more to bring down the barriers about being mentally ill in our country than Rosalynn Carter. She has done more, I think, in her lifetime to address this particular issue and this challenge that we have before us as a country, as a society, and as a people, of just about anyone I know. Mental illness costs the health care system hundreds of billions of dollars. For example, if we could just find the way to delay the onset of Alzheimer's for 5 years, it is estimated that we would save something like $50 billion a year. People often say, oh, we're spending too much money on research. But research saves lives, and it saves our ability to deal with the problems at hand. As First Lady, she helped with the passage of the Mental Health Systems Act of 1980. She now heads the Carter Center's mental health program. She is presently working on passing national legislation to require health insurance companies to cover mental illness equal to the level for physical illness. We wish you Godspeed, Mrs. Carter, in that effort. It is now my great honor to introduce someone, Teresa Stitchett, who is the research coordinator of the Children in Armed Conflict Program, co-chair of the International Children's Mental Health Working Group at the Harvard Children's Initiative. She will introduce our very, very wonderful speaker this evening. Teresa, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Pryor. On behalf of the Harvard Children's Initiative and the International Children's Mental Health Working Group, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Rosalynn Carter. First, I would like to say a few words about the Harvard Children's Initiative and the International Children's Mental Health Working Group. The Harvard Children's Initiative is one of 5 original interfaculty initiatives at Harvard University, which seek collectively to focus the entire spectrum of Harvard's resources on an urgent issue: children's ability to grow to a healthy, productive adulthood. Under the leadership of Professor Judith Palfrey, the Harvard Children's Initiative fosters collaborations among faculty and students from the many disciplines to address the complex challenges facing children today. The Harvard Children's Initiative also promotes interdisciplinary research, educational endeavors, and community activities related to children's development and well-being. The Harvard Children's Initiative formed the International Children's Mental Health Working Group earlier this year. The group is chaired by Dr. Myron Belfer and myself, and the working group was established to stimulate attention from the Harvard community to respond to the challenges for service development, training, policy, and research to promote child mental health in the international arena. 70 members come from across the Harvard faculties to participate in this initiative. In welcoming Mrs. Carter, it must be noted that her long career and dedication to public service, human rights, and improving the lives of children and families has resulted in an endless list of honors and accomplishments. So tonight I would like to share with you a few highlights. Rosalynn Carter has worked for more than 2 decades to improve the quality of life for people around the world. As mother of 4, Mrs. Carter has maintained a lifelong dedication to issues affecting women and children. Today, she's an advocate for mental health, early childhood immunization, human rights, and conflict resolution through her work at the Carter Center in Atlanta, Georgia. This center is a private institution founded by the former president and Mrs. Carter in 1982. Rosalynn Carter has been a driving force in the field of mental health throughout her public service career. As active honorary chair of the President's Commission on Mental Health during President Carter's administration, she helped bring about passage of the Mental Health Systems Act of 1980. Since that time, she's served as Distinguished Centennial Lecturer at Agnes Scott College in Decatur, Georgia, from 1988 to 1992, and is currently a Distinguished Fellow at Emory University's Institute for Women's Studies in Atlanta. Mrs. Carter has received many honors, among them the Volunteer of the Decade and Into the Light Awards from the National Mental Health Association, the Award of Merit for the support of the Equal Rights Amendment from the National Organization for Women, and the Presidential Medal of Freedom, America's highest civilian honor. She has written 4 books, the last of 2 which reflect her commitment to mental health. Help Yourself Help Others, a book for caregivers, and her latest book, published in 1999, Helping Someone with Mental Illness, a compassionate guide for family, friends, and caregivers. Today, she continues her leadership through the Carter Center in Atlanta, where she created and chairs the Carter Center Mental Health Task Force, an advisory body of experts, consumers, and advocates promoting positive change in the field of mental health. Each year, she hosts the Rosalynn Carter Symposium on Mental Health Policy, bringing together leaders of the nation's mental health organizations to address critical issues. On behalf of the Harvard Children's Initiative, the ARCO Forum of the John F. Kennedy School of Government, and the International Children's Mental Health Working Group, it is my great pleasure to welcome Rosalynn Carter.
Thank you. Thank you, Teresa, and thank you for pronouncing my name correctly. That doesn't happen very often. And thank you, David, for your kind words. I think the reason we won that election is because nobody thought we could win, so they said, well, we'll just help you because we know it's helped. We've made so many friends. It was wonderful. Well, I'm really pleased to be here, and I bring greetings from my husband. He's somewhere. Actually, he's in upstate New York at a little college speaking to students there. He doesn't do that ever, hardly, but he's doing this for a really special friend. And he's going to be here tonight. He comes back here tonight, and we'll be here for a couple of days. Well, what we do all of the time is work on Carter Center programs. We have a lot of programs. We say we work on peace and health, and our peace programs are conflict resolution programs, human rights programs, democracy. We just came back from monitoring the elections in Guyana this past month, in Guyana and in Peru. We only monitor elections when a country is coming from an authoritative government to a democracy, or when a democracy is very weak and in trouble. Our health programs include eradicating diseases. We're eradicating a horrible disease called guinea worm. It's 98% gone. We are so thrilled. There were 3.5 million cases when we started. These are mostly in Africa. And now most of the remaining cases are in the southern Sudan, where we can't get in because of the war. But if we eradicate, or when we eradicate guinea worm, it will be only the second disease in history ever eradicated. So excited about that. We have other health programs. We are we distribute medication to control river bindings. We're working on lymphatic filariasis, schistosomiasis, trachoma, mostly in Africa. We have programs in 35 African countries, health and agriculture programs, conflict resolution, and so forth. And we have an agriculture program. We call that a health program because we work with farmers to increase their food grain production, which is nutrition. So, and then we have my mental health program. And we have many initiatives at the Carter Center. We have mental health fellowships for journalists. Sometimes people laugh when I say that because they think maybe journalists need mental health fellowship. But it's been really great to have journalists working. We're trying to develop a cadre of journalists who know the issues and can report accurately instead of sensationally when things happen. And we've gone international. 2 of our journalists this year will be from New Zealand, and so we're excited about that. They've done some really innovative things in the mental health field in New Zealand, and we want to know about that, but we also want them to be able to go back home and tell the people in New Zealand what's happening. So, and I have a committee of women leaders around the world. It started out as, I wrote to all the first ladies in the world, all the spouses of heads of state, working with the World Federation for Mental Health. And it was First Ladies for Mental Health, and then I had 2 queens who wanted to join, so I couldn't call them First Ladies. I had to change the name of the committee. And we've been thinking about how we could work through this committee, even before I was invited here. We've been thinking about how we could work through this committee to help children with mental health problems in the developing countries. And so I'm really pleased to be here and so excited about the initiative, mental health initiative and the international program. Well, I have worked on mental health issues for a very long time. I began when Jimmy became governor, and when we moved into the governor's mansion, Amy Carter was 3 years old, our daughter. She is now 33 years old, which I hate to tell everybody because it gives away my age. But I was campaigning for my husband for governor, and I had so many people ask me what he would do for an emotionally disturbed child or another mentally ill family member or friend. And so one night I was campaigning. This was a very disorganized campaign, governor's campaign, which we lost, that is. And we got in late in the campaign, but I was campaigning in a town and heard that Jimmy was going to be there. And early that morning I'd been standing at a shift change of a factory, a cotton mill, and this woman came out with lint all over. She'd worked all night long. And I asked her if she was going home to sleep, and she said, well, I'm going home. I hope I can get some sleep, but I have to take care of my mentally ill daughter. She said, my husband's salary doesn't make ends meet when we have to pay for her care too. And so he stays home at night while I work, and I stay home in the daytime while he works. Well, when I saw Jimmy that night, when I found out he was coming to town, I got in the back of the rally. He didn't know I was there. And when he finished speaking, I stood in line with everybody. And I don't know how many of you have stood in receiving lines, but a lot of times you'll be talking to somebody and you'll reach for the other hand before you look at them. Well, I reached for his hand. He took my hand, and then it came around. He said, what are you doing here? I said, I came to see what you're going to do about mental health issues when you're governor of Georgia. He said, we're going to have the best program in the country, and I'm going to put you in charge of it. Well, he didn't, of course, put me in charge of it. But he did appoint a governor's commission to improve services to the mentally and emotionally handicapped, and I was a member of that commission, and that was the beginning of my education about mental illnesses. We had the Governor's Commission, I had the President's Commission on Mental Health in the White House, and now I have a really good program at the Carter Center. We've made so much progress in the last 30 years since I became involved. But in some ways it feels that for children, we still have a very long way to go. I'm so excited about this initiative here because Harvard can make such a great contribution to this. I know firsthand what good things can happen when the resources of this great university get behind a public policy issue like this. Dr. Julius Richmond, he's now Professor Emeritus at the Harvard Medical School, was Surgeon General when my husband was president, and I worked with him. He was a great advisor to me on mental health issues and is now on the my mental health task force at the Carter Center. I've relied on him heavily for a very long time. Dr. Leon Eisenberg, who is here, now serves as a long-standing member of the advisory committee to my mental health program at the Carter Center. He was on my task force for a long time, and now he's on the advisory committee. I really thank him for all his help. Dr. Greg Frachon, also from Harvard, is now the director of my mental health program of the Carter Center Mental Health Program. And Dr. William Beardsley, I hope I see him tonight, because he's been to the Carter Center several times, and he's helped us on children's mental health issues. And I quote him often in speeches, and I quoted him in a book I wrote on mental health. Well, tonight I want to talk to you about two very positive developments and see how we can take advantage of this progress to improve the lives and futures of our children. First, during the last couple of decades, even just in the last decade, research has produced dramatic breakthroughs in our understanding of the brain and in the nature of mental illnesses. We now know that serious mental illnesses are biological, just like physical illnesses. They can be diagnosed, they can be treated effectively, and the overwhelming majority of people can lead normal lives, living at home, working, going to school, becoming contributing citizens in the community. And research has also taught us much about early childhood development, especially about the importance of providing an environment for infants and children where they will be safe, stimulated, nurtured, and taught the skills to cope with adversity. This is what experts call dependable attachment. Well, with all of this new knowledge, we have great potential now for promoting healthy and positive behaviors in children and for more effectively treating their mental illnesses when they develop. And research has helped further with a second major development, and that's the close integration of physical and mental health. For centuries, we drew hard lines between the two. We had physical on one side and mental on the other side, and we focused on the first and ignored or actually ran away from the second. But in the last 100 years, we've made incredible advances in the treatment of physical illnesses, like polio and measles and heart disease and cancer and so forth. At the turn of the century, the average lifespan was 45 years, and today it's 78 or so. And we talk openly about physical illnesses. I remember when nobody mentioned the word cancer. It was just something that nobody talked about. But today we talk openly. We don't talk openly. We're just beginning. I think we're really beginning to talk openly about mental illnesses. And now, because we do better understand the brain, we know more about the inextricable links between healthy minds and healthy bodies. Positive mental health is an integral part of our overall health and well-being, and it deserves the same level of attention and resources that we give to, that we always have given to physical health. But you and I know that that's not the case. I've been fighting discrimination for years in financing and services for mental health and in fighting stigma, which is still pervasive and still keeps so many people from going for help. They don't want to be labeled as mentally ill. Sometimes I get really discouraged about it. And yet sometimes I'm optimistic because we've learned so much and we know so much more and we're beginning to talk about mental illnesses more. And because I'm here in a public policy school, I think you all know that Dr. David Satcher the Surgeon General is the chief public health officer of the country. And recently I've been so excited about the first ever Surgeon General's report on mental health. And it's a public health document, a comprehensive public health document. And it's so important because mental health has never been included in public health. And this includes it in public health, but also it focuses on the latest scientific and clinical knowledge. It brings the issue to the forefront of public attention. And that is so important because the more we talk about mental illnesses, the more openly the issue becomes, and the quicker I think that people will begin to feel that it's all right to get mental health services. So here we are at the beginning of the 21st century with so much new knowledge about the brain and human development, with evidence-based treatments at work and strong public leadership provided by the Surgeon General. Yet, where are our children? The facts are frightening. Approximately 1 in 5 children suffer from a mild to severe disorder during the course of a year. Approximately 1 in 10 of these children suffer from a mental illness severe enough to cause some level of impairment. And yet, only about 20% of them receive specialty mental health care. One study showed that when referrals are made to specialists for these emotional or behavioral problems, the average time to wait for an appointment is 3 or 4 months. I can vouch for this because we have a staff person at the Carter Center who has mental health problems herself and has had trouble getting appointments, but her son has a really serious mental health problem. And when she tried to get an appointment for him, the appointment was for 4 months. And we intervened. But how many children don't have someone to intervene for them? It's a real tragedy. Suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death among teenagers in the United States, and evidence suggests that 90% of these children and adolescents who commit suicide suffer from a mental disorder. And here's one more troubling statistic. 22% of children between the ages of 0 to 5 in our country live in poverty. And poverty has been proven to be a risk factor for later mental health problems. In fact, poverty has been called a pathway to depression. Well, in summary, our children are in crisis, and the Surgeon General report documents the key elements of this dilemma. Mental health problems are no respecter of persons. They occur in families of all social classes and backgrounds, yet there are children who are at a greater risk due to many factors, and these include low birth weight. So many mothers don't get good prenatal care, and the babies have low birth weight. A family history of mental illness or addiction, abuse or neglect, the loss of a parent or a primary caregiver. Well, preventive interventions such as good prenatal care, targeting children of mothers with mental illness or drug addicts, children in foster care, and so forth, have been shown, these preventive interventions have been shown to work, to reduce the impact of these risk factors, but we don't apply them. We know what to do and we don't do it. Primary care providers and the schools are major settings for the recognition of mental and emotional problems in children. And it's so important to reach children early, or to reach mental health problems early, because when they go unrecognized and untreated, it can lead to substance abuse, violence, suicide, or other negative outcomes. And trained staff in schools and also in primary care facilities, offices, are limited. And the number of specialists in schools are completely inadequate. In fact, they're almost non-existent. In Georgia this past year, we passed a bill providing for a nurse in every school. We've never had that in Georgia, and most states don't have that. A nurse in every school. We had a hard time finding them. There's a shortage of nurses. We had a hard time finding nurses to fill these slots. And when we do find them, I don't imagine very many of them are trained to recognize mental health problems. We need to train teachers, nurses and parents to recognize mental health problems. I'd like to see research done on that and see what the outcome would be. And I've been talking to Greg about doing something like that in Atlanta. There's so many projects I would like to have. And one other that I'll mention that I'm working on, and it would be wonderful if the Harvard committees would get initiative would get behind this. Last year we got passed in the Georgia legislature a bill to register children at age 2. The only problem is it's voluntary, so I've got a lot of work to do. But if we register them for school at age 2, they would have to have all the immunizations, and we could screen them for any physical or mental problems. And I just think it would be so great that so many children we don't reach at all, and so many parents, particularly in the inner cities, don't know that they need to immunize their children before school age because they have to be immunized at school. When there are epidemics, it's the little ones that suffer. So we could just get them at age 2. It would be so great. The multiple problems associated with serious mental illness, mental or emotional illnesses are best treated with a systems approach to care. With everybody working together, yet this is so, it just doesn't work today. Our services are so fragmented. Families must be essential partners in the delivery of care for children, and yet families today are under more stress than ever before. And finally, the report stressed, this is the Surgeon General's report, how much cultural differences exacerbate the problem of access to appropriate services. So many times in the health centers there are people who don't speak Spanish, for instance, who can't talk to children in their language. And this represents a major barrier to care. So we have this enormous gap between what we know what to do and what we actually do. And unfortunately, our young people pay the price. The Surgeon General recognized from this report that there was a crisis with children's needs. And so he called what he called a national forum. He brought together representatives from the departments of Education, Justice, Health and Human Services, of course, and Education and Justice, brought them all together for a follow-up report that has just been released, the report of the Surgeon General's Conference on Children's Mental Health, a National Action Agenda. And it has not got a lot of attention. We knew this report was coming out, so our symposium this year, and the Carter Center, we have an annual symposium with the heads of more than 60 mental health organizations in the country. And we had already decided that that would be our topic. And Surgeon General's office has let us know that the report did not get the attention that he had hoped it would get. It's not been very visible, so I hope that our symposium will help with the publicity about that. It makes the case that if we're going to meet the needs, mental health needs of our children, we have to move toward a community system where we balance health promotion, disease prevention, early detection, and access to care for everyone. We have the resources to do these things. We lack the political will. That's where all of us need to get involved. And we need some changes in our approach to research. So it extends from the basic work in the laboratory to the clinical setting, and then to the delivery of health services more broadly, and finally to the school-based and community-based prevention and early intervention efforts. There's so much work that needs to be done to bridge that gap between what we know what to do and what we actually do. And finally, we need to shift our focus pretty radically toward activities that enhance a child's resiliency. We had a symposium in 1998 at the Carter Center, and we brought together all of these heads of these mental health issues. We do that to work on the policy issue. And that symposium, the title of that was Promoting Positive and Healthy Behaviors in Children. And everybody recognizes that if we give children a good start in life, they have a much better chance to grow up to be contributing healthy citizens. And so at our symposium, we looked at a variety of ways to help children, beginning early in life, like early Head Start. And there's some good evidence that the efficacy of these programs, we need a lot more research on these. I'm giving the Children's Initiative some good opportunities in this speech. And actually at home we have a good opportunity at home. Just about just a few weeks ago, Dr. Richmond was down in Americus, Georgia, our county seat. He's on the board of the Rosalynn Carter Institute for Human Development. And we had a meeting, and he pointed out that we have the essentials in our home community. Georgia is the only state in the nation that has pre-kindergarten required for everybody. We have pre-kindergarten, and we have an early Head Start program in our county seat. It's an area of about 15,000 people, maybe 20,000. It would be just perfect. We have the Rosalynn Carter Institute there. It would just be a perfect place to work on this particular issue. Well, the family is, of course, the fundamental unit responsible for the well-being of our children, but you know how difficult it is today. A lot different from it was when I was growing up, a lot different to raise a family, and a lot more complex than it was when I was raising my children. Most people can't rely today on the stable kind of close-knit community like mine when I was growing up in Plains, Georgia. And so children are becoming the responsibility not only of the family, but of the healthcare providers, the teachers, the community and church workers, even business leaders. And we need more research to know how to do it. We need more research to know what to offer and how to offer it. This is another opportunity for the Harvard Children's Initiative. Well, we need more done to help parents. We need more done to reduce the disparities, the problems, the troubles among children in our communities, so that all children have quality education and child care, and more needs to be done to make our communities safe and supportive. Well, I like to quote Jim Grant. I often quote Jim Grant. He was the head of UNICEF when my husband was president and stayed on for a good many years. And in his last speech to the United Nations General Assembly, he said, "The vital, vulnerable years of childhood should be given a first call on society's concerns and capacities. There will always be something more immediate. There will never be anything more important." Well, in closing, I urge each of you to look for ways as individuals, but also as part of a larger institution, ways you can help our country finally address what is a crisis in America today. A growing number of children suffering from mental and emotional disorders and a fragmented and inadequate system of care. Now is the time, as we begin the 21st century, for us to find ways to work together so that the vision of a healthy life for all the children of our country and of the world will become a reality. We can no longer afford to let something more immediate get in the way. Thank you.
We'll have a few questions here. Mrs. Carter, we have had, I think, around 90 forums this academic year, right here. And I don't think, in watching all the audiences during this period, that I've ever seen an audience as intensely focused on the words that were coming from the speaker. And it must be because all of us know that we have a lot of work to do, and I think also that is a way of this audience showing their deep love and affection and admiration for you. That was truly remarkable. Well, we have a few minutes here remaining, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 microphones. And until our first questioner comes to the microphone this evening, we're going to go for about maybe as long as 15 minutes. I have the first question. What can we do as individuals, Mrs. Carter, those of us who are, say, not doctors, we're not physicians, we're not politicians any longer, what can we do to help your cause? Do you have something you'd like to add?
I can do a lot of things. The most important thing we can do is overcome the stigma and fight the stigma and talk about mental illnesses. And when somebody is is mentally ill, help them. Don't laugh at them or even feel sorry for them. Just acknowledge it, and there should be no difference in physical illnesses and mental illnesses, because they're all part of our body. They're all biological, and we've learned that now through research. We didn't know it for a long time. But you can do things like correct people when they call somebody crazy. Don't use those kinds of words to identify mentally ill people. Not saying crazy is a really hard thing. In fact, at one mental health meeting, I was on the stage and I was doing something around, and I went to the person, I said, "You all must think I'm crazy." I was so embarrassed. And also notice ads in the paper. If you see an ad, if you hear somebody on television, or write to them. I wrote to Mike Wallace, no, it was Dan Rather once, when he made some remarks. Write to them, let them know that you don't like that, and that it's hurtful to people who are mentally ill. But to try to overcome stigma is the most important thing you can do. Of course, you can join organizations, you can contribute to mental health associations. They always need money. You can volunteer in mental health centers. They always need volunteers. They always need money. And you can't imagine how much help it is to a mentally ill person just to talk to them or listen to them, because so often they're shunned. You can't imagine how good it'd make you feel too if you can help somebody like that. So there are just lots of things that can be done.
We're going to start right here. Please, let's not ask more than one question. Let's keep our questions brief. Yes, sir.
Hi, Mrs. Carter, thank you very much for coming today. My name is Todd Bida. I'm Harvard class of '87. My question concerns fundraising. In the public sector, it seems like there's much interest in mental health. In the private sector, what can you recommend for private individuals in the private sector looking to help bring this issue into the boardrooms of America and have the Fortune 500 begin to contribute and begin to recognize this as an issue as well and support it with their dollars and their words?
I think it would be great if the Fortune 500 companies would contribute, but the one thing they can do is provide in that insurance to cover mental health issues. And we have found that when companies do that, the health insurance goes up a little bit at first, but over a period of just a very short period, 4 years or something like that, the overall health costs come down, because when people are depressed or have anxiety disorders and so forth, they go to the doctor, and so many times they're not diagnosed, and they keep going to a doctor, and the doctor doesn't recognize the mental illness. And so what they found is when people do start going and do go for their mental health services, when they do offer mental health services, then the other health costs come down. And so over a period of time, it pays. I have one company in Columbus, Georgia, and they said that their insurance costs now are 30% lower than the companies around them. They provide total mental health coverage. And it's so, another thing that's good about that is that when they do provide mental health services, in the beginning, people kind of hesitate to go for the reason that they don't want to be labeled, but one will go. It takes a while, a couple of years sometimes. One will go, and then another will go, and then it becomes the normal, natural thing to do. So that's a really good way to help. In public policy, we just need more. The mental health services are just almost non-existent. I mean, it is a terrible situation. The only way a person can get coverage through the government is, through government services, is to be on Medicaid, to have nothing. Almost you go for a little while and then you're cut off. And so many families have to give up their children to adoption, because just to be able to give up, not adoption, but give up for them, because that's the only way they can get into a center, get help into a center. So, and people on the street, mental health will a person has to be a danger to himself or someone else to be able to get hospitalization. So they go into the hospital and they stay, supposed to stay until they are no longer a danger to themselves or someone else. In California, it's 72 hours. I don't know what it is. I've got to learn what it is. It's not long enough to stabilize a person at all. And so they're turned out of the hospital. They go, in theory, they're supposed to go to the Community Mental Health Center for services to get their medication monitored and so forth. They don't go, they're back on the street, and it's just a cycle over and over, back on the street. It's just a terrible situation. We need to arouse the country about that, because mentally ill people deserve what physically ill people need.
Let's go right here, please.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Sobel. I'm a Kennedy School graduate and now from the American Prospect magazine. And my question actually is very related to what you just mentioned, which is that I know there's a big conflict between mental health activists, some who want to make sure that mentally ill people are not locked up in mental hospitals against their will, and on the other hand, people who are concerned that when people are sent out too soon or when there aren't laws, making sure that people can really are forced to take medication to protect them. So there's a conflict between those two things. And I wonder if you think that there's some fair law to make sure that those two values are both answered.
If there are laws?
If there's a law that protects both the civil liberties of mentally ill people so that they don't have to, so that they're not locked up against their will, and then on the other hand, I know it often happens that people do not take their medication and are, not imminently a danger to themselves, but eventually. And
there's an American Disabilities Act that helps a little bit, but there is, I think, no involuntary.
I don't know of
hospitalization. Well, when
I don't know of a magic law that would have.
They are not. There's no law that says that that keeps a person, that says a person has to take the medication. That's when people get in trouble. But there's no law that says they have to take it, and that's a real problem, because when they start feeling good, then they leave off the medicine. So that's another thing you can do if you have a friend who has a mental illness. Just be sure they take the medicine. But I don't know any more answers to your question. I'm sorry.
One thing we all might do there, and I think you've championed this, is try to get the prices for the medications down somewhat in that area. That is something we all might could add to the list of things we could do. Let me go up here, right here, please.
Good evening. My name is Marge Med. I'm a Kennedy School graduate of the class of '99 and currently president of the Maine Children's Alliance. My question is simple. I can't imagine that any other voice would be as dramatic as yours to bring the attention to children in our own states, internationally, but now come national. My question is, do you have any plans to take your voice, your powerful voice, to the states and help us as we move those children's issues forward?
Well, I have my mental health program. I have the symposium. I very rarely make speeches. When I do, about something else, about to a local mental health, because we stay so busy and stay gone so much. But the invitations that I do accept are those from national organizations and sometimes from state organizations. I just don't want to get 50 invitations to come, because I can't do that. I can't do that right now. But I'll work with you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, up here, please.
Yes, Mrs. Carter, thank you for your leadership on this issue. I'm up here.
Okay, I see you.
My name is Teresa, and I'm at the School of Public Health. My question regards mental illness in the armed forces. I'm wondering, since the armed forces have a unique role of employing people and taking care of their health needs, and I know there's no confidentiality with mental health services related to people in the military. Do you know if there's anyone, is the Carter Center or any other group working on rights for mentally ill people in the armed forces?
I don't know the answer to that. Does anybody?
Does
Leon,
anyone know
Leon,
the
do you know the
answer to that?
that?
Is there any person or group challenged with the mission of working with the mentally ill issues in the
Kathy.
military?
Hey.
Is that-
Kathy, do you know the answer?
There's a group of Washington called the Mental Health Law Project. They've been active for years and years and years around sort of the whole range of issues related to the rights of mentally disabled people. So I don't know if they're doing anything right now specifically about it, but it would be sort of an interesting place for it. Because I think that there's sort of a body of expertise in this country around the issue of protection of rights that would be the group or its successor. It's been for a couple different terms. But the mental health program at the Carter Center could help you identify some of who those folks are.
Kathy was my project secretary in the White House, and she's now lives in Boston, and she knows all the answers. I call her for information.
Well, thank you very much. And Teresa, thank you for the question. Right here, please.
Hi, Mrs. Carter. Thank you very much for being here. My name is Jen Medeiros. I'm a master's student also at the School of Public Health. My question is around the growing number of children, as you mentioned, suffering with illness, the increasing awareness, decreasing services, and the fact that this has resulted in some cases in over-medicalization, I think, of children. And what you think, how we strike the balance between medicalization of children with their myriad problems, so many children, and prevention. What you think that balance is and how we strike it.
Say that again, closer to the microphone. I have a hard
Sure. I'm concerned a little bit about what I think about over-medicalization of children and how we strike a balance between that end of service and prevention.
I'm concerned about it too, and I really don't think anybody knows what's going to happen because the children haven't grown up yet. It's all very new, but I would not want to take it away from some anyway, because I've seen it help so many children, medication that so many children are taking right now. We need to work on prevention, and there's not ever been a lot of research, some research, but not a lot on prevention. We know risk factors. We know protective factors. We know risk factors like a child losing a parent early in life. Well, the ones I just talked about, child abuse and children of abusive parents. I know I was at a school one day in Atlanta. We were working in the poverty area of Atlanta, and the principal told me that the hardest thing he had to do was put little first and second grade children on the bus to go home. They cried because they didn't want to go home. We know what kind of home they go to. So we know risk factors, but how to work with them and develop programs for children, or how to recognize the problems. It's something that's one of the things I hope we can work on now. Greg?
You can contact Peter Jensen, who's the director at the Center for the Advancement of Children's Mental Health.
Okay.
He's done a lot of work on this particular issue.
Great. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Right here, please.
As a pediatrician at the Children's Hospital, I'm in awe of the size of the assignment that the state of Georgia has taken on by pausing at the age of 2 with each child to reflect on risks and stability and potential for humanistic intervention. We have in the field of child development a reasonable body of knowledge in terms of the factors in childhood that are supportive or otherwise. We don't have a comparable knowledge base, would be my notion, for the prevention of emotional disturbances or mental illness. And this is an astonishing moment, and I would hope that Georgians would allow some of the rest of us to share with them in trying to think through what can be learned from all this, because it is an area of true pioneering, and I salute you for that vision.
Thank you. We have a really good governor. And now we work, and he told me that next year he's going to be working on 0 to 3. So we got the 4-year-olds in kindergarten now. We got nurses in the school, so thank you.
Let's go right up here, please.
Hello, Meg Muckenhaupt, class of '88, freelance writer, possible applicant for your journalism fellowship. Just curious, I've been reading some materials about special education and mental health in children, and the statistics I've been looking at seem to say that the vast majority of children who get individualized education programs, special education help for mental illness in schools are young African American males. I was wondering if the Carter Center is looking at all at the role of race and treatment of mental illness in schools.
The schools, as I said in these remarks, are one of the places where children with mental illnesses are cared for. We have, one of our journalists this year was African-American editor of the Atlanta Constitution, and his subject was the mental health of African-Americans, and he's writing a book about that now. And the African-Americans are the hardest to get to go for help. This man, who is African-American, said, in my culture, you're either right in the head or you're not. And so they resist help. We had the Surgeon General's report, he had a follow-up report on minorities last year. And I think the report still has not come out, but he talked about it. And so we had, our symposium last year was on the mental health of minorities, and it was absolutely wonderful because we had African Americans, we had Hispanics, we had just a range of different cultures represented to talk about their problems, and I think we have a little booklet that we've done about that.
Let's see, right up here, yes, sir.
Mrs. Carter, my name is Alexander Kravitz. I'm a graduate of the school.
Okay. I tell you, this will be our next to last question. We'll come down here for the last question. All right, up here.
I hope it's a good one. You know, the senator was absolutely right about being sort of intensely focused on your words when we're listening to you. I wanted a follow-up question to the one on the journalism fellowships. I'm wondering if it's open to international or to foreign journalists, because it seems that this is an issue that's taking a lot of education here in the United States, where you could say is perhaps pretty sophisticated compared to to some other countries. And I'm wondering what's being done internationally to put your message.
Well, we put our the application form on the internet. We give $10,000 a year. They don't quit their jobs. They come and they apply with a subject. They work through the year on that subject. Some come to the Carter Center pretty regularly. Some only come once or twice. They come back at the end of the year and report. And so when we put this on the internet, we got lots of applications. We got one from somebody in Nairobi who said, I saw this and I went out and looked at our mental institution, and wham, it was horrible. So I came back and I wrote an editorial about it, and wham, the government called me. So he took the government official out to look at it, and he said, now we're working on our mental health institution. And but we have not, we have two from New Zealand this coming year, and those are the first two. One problem with those in foreign countries is, unless it's in the developed countries, they can't get anything printed. It's really difficult, and they can work and might not ever get anything printed. We're thinking we might have a better chance working internationally with my women's committee, and also in our health programs, working on eradicating diseases and controlling diseases and so forth. We have developed a network of health workers working with Don Hopkins, who is the head of this program, who came from Centers for Disease Control. He's been with us for a long time now. And he has developed a network of health workers in these countries. And so when we have a new disease, we have this network already in place. And Greg was with Don in Togo a few weeks ago and talked to the people there about it. And also, Centers for Disease Control says that the health departments in these countries in the developing world are the least, the worst, I would say, departments in the government. So many are just out of the bush, have no idea about health. So we thought that if we could get the first ladies to focus on mental health, it could also help the health department. So that's the way we're trying to go about it rather than through the journalism program.
Let's have one final question right here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Mei Ling Wang, School of Public Health. Well, in some countries, political dissenters are treated as mentally ill cases, and I wonder if Carter Center has addressed this issue, or do you plan to address this issue in your future project? Thank you.
No, did everybody hear the question? That's just not anything that we've worked on. Political dissenters are labeled as mentally ill in some countries, she said. No, we haven't worked on that issue. So many things go on in countries, and in Africa, Greg knows because he was in Togo. Now, when you ask about mental health programs, what they say is we just chain them to a tree. And actually, about 60 years ago, maybe a little longer than that, in Plains, there was a mentally ill young man or child, and his mother chained him to a tree. He was enough so that he could play around. I didn't know about this because when I grew up, he was away in a big state mental institution back at home. So they are so far behind. Some countries have no programs, nothing for mentally ill. It's really sad and a huge task to try to tackle it, but kind of chip away at it. And actually, I'm going to talk to another group tonight, the international group, and I was going to tell them about the World Health Organization chose this. Am I talking too long?
No, you go right ahead. You go right ahead.
The World Health Organization chose mental health as their focus for the year, I think. And their slogan is Dare to Care. So they had children, they called for children in the countries around the world to write, the little children were to draw pictures and the others were to write themes about dare to care, about mentally ill people. And I wrote a letter they got me to write a letter to my women's committee, and then they mailed it to others. I have 41 women leaders, spouses, and queens. And, actually, 60 or 72? 60 countries participated. And some of the letters, and this is into the schools, some of the letters are just incredible. The drawings are really great. They're going to announce, I don't know whether they're going to announce have they announced the winner? They have or have not? They have, yes. Okay, because it was pending. And the one who won was from Palau. Does anybody know where Palau is? She was 17 years old, and I haven't seen her letter, but anyway, thank you so much. It's been wonderful to be with you.
All I can say is the world is a better place because of you. Let's give her a standing ovation. I don't know how much time we have. What time is it?